Hello everyone, I'm Zeenat Firdaus and I have Dr. Sukant Khurana with me, who is a well-known entrepreneur, mentor, public speaker and a scientist. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to ask you one question, which is how to make a good PowerPoint presentation.
Excellent question. So, PowerPoint presentations are important for almost all aspects of industry, research, academia, and bureaucracy these days. They're also hated in some circles because sometimes you rely on PowerPoint and don't communicate your central idea, which you could have done on whiteboards. So, for my time in academia, I used to encourage my students for ideas then to avoid PowerPoints instead of make them. But when you needed to present data, then PowerPoint is very important. But let's look at the basics. I think the commonest mistakes and how to do things. General lessons are planned carefully. Right? Know your audience. What you're communicating will depend on who your audience is. Is it layman? Is it your lab mate? Is it your office staff? Is it your seniors? Is it board of managers, board of directors, essentially? Uh, Time your presentation. You shouldn't be running short of time. You shouldn't run over your time, right? Speak comfortably and clearly. Check your spelling and grammar. Bad writing makes a horrible impact. Um, do not at any cost read the presentation. Practice your presentation so you can speak from bullet points. Make sure when you're even going from one slide to another, you know mentally what comes next after that slide. You do have the option of mirroring that on your screen. You can see the next slide while on the projector, it's only one slide. Okay. Give brief overview at start when you're doing this. Right. So when talking, do not necessarily, you don't have to, um, you don't have to rush straight into your things, especially in the laundry list. Right. So there are several aspects of what also not to do. Right. Don't use slight transitions and sound effects. Cliched, annoying, standard clip art becomes so annoying. Unless absolutely required, something fits in. Avoid the templates, right? Absolutely avoid very heavy text slides. People almost end up writing paragraphs, quotations, full sentences, right? Limit your slides to 5 or 6 bullet points with none of them having more than 5 or 6 key words in each line, right? Don't even need to have a full stop necessarily end of your thing, and obviously be consistent. Um, don't just copy paste your resume or something from your website, right? Um, don't have too much faith in technology, right? Your computer can fail, so carry a pen drive, right? Basically, compact flash memory card, or send an email so that whichever institute, whichever place you're traveling to, you can use, download, and give a presentation using their media. There are some key things on fonts, right? Don't use fonts smaller than 24, ideally 30. Use the same font for all your headlines. Uh, I see with my older colleagues, because they're accumulating from different talks, and some very young, inexperienced freshers using different headlines. Make it consistent, right? Use bold and different sizes for caption subheadings, but obviously make them consistent across slides. Add page numbers at the bottom so people know which slide to go back to if you don't want them to be questioning in the middle of a talk. Um, Use different colors, styles, sizes for different impact. Don't use it too often, but when you need to have some contrast. It's okay to use different font color, right? We discussed long sentences, but also don't use acronyms. Um, Limit punctuation marks, right? Bullet points, use 6 by 6 rules, not more than 6 bullet points on a slide, not more than 6 words on a bullet point, right? Um, so to test the font size, stand 6 feet from the monitor and see if you can see the slide. There are aspects of design and graphical images. Um, Use standardized positions, colors, and styles so people are not searching because they're used to seeing certain things on top, they're used to seeing certain things in the middle, bottom, right? Limit information to essentials. Content should be self-evident. Colors and contrast should be such that it all complements. Too many slides can lose your audience. Okay. Limit the transitions used. It's use it so sparingly that if you're using it, people keep in mind what's coming, right? What's it for? Okay. Um, Use a single style of dingbat for bullets throughout the page. Don't keep changing them. That shows lack of maturity. Make images of the same size. It's not that on one slide you have a very large image on another very tiny one, so make it more uniform. Keep the design clean, uncluttered, right? Uh, don't use clip art. If you use it very sparingly, right? Um, Try to use the same style graphical image throughout the presentation, right? Limit also the number of graphical images on a slide. You shouldn't have 10 graphical images on a single slide, right? The repetition of an image reinforces the message, so use that smartly. If I really want to drive home the point of something on epilepsy, some medicine doing something to excitability, let's say some ion channel, I'll repeat it. If I want to say something about X trading having an impact on certain kind of financial interaction, I would actually repeat it maybe twice or thrice in a presentation. Avoid flashy images, noisy animations, right? Um, Limit the colors on a single screen. Do not make it a multicolored thing, right? Um, and some vibrant colors are difficult to read, especially on a projector. So you may realize that some of the red, orange color, or blue colors are not necessarily very clear once they're projected. Okay. But in summary, what I've said, plan very carefully, do your research, know your audience, time your presentation, speak comfortably, clearly, check your spelling and grammar. Do not read your presentation. Give a brief overview at the start, right? Present the information later. Finally, review important points. That all becomes very important. Um, Having bulleted points, right, can be very effective, especially if they appear one after another. So those effects are useful effects, right? Use a mouse to sort of point things, or use a pointer, whichever way you're going to use it, but don't have a moving pointer effect. A lot of people keep playing with where the arrow is or where the pointer is while giving presentation, right? If you're using any sound effects, quiet, be quiet at the time that the sound effect is playing and speak at the end of it. If your content is simple, print the slide so audience can take notes, right? If there's limited audience and they're really important to you, if you're speaking to 400 students, obviously you would not print 400 notes. But if you're speaking to 5 people, board of directors, or you're convincing investors, you can always take notes, right? And you can obviously, give it to them so they can write there, and they'll be very impressed with that. So there are people who you'll come up with various acronyms, 555, like no more, than 5 words per line of text, 5 lines per text, those kind of things. Some people say a PowerPoint which has more than 10 slides is horribly wrong, but that applies to most of the industry things. If you're in scientific research, you have half an hour presentation, and in half an hour presentation should have 15 slides or so, usually 2 minutes a slide, and it can even be 1 minute a slide. But remember, the most important thing is that it's not about the slides, it's not about the PowerPoint. They're there to aid you. You're not there to be tethered to them. So that's something that most people forget. That is the most important thing, is that those are your tools. You are not their slave. Right? So you need to know your presentation. You need to know what's coming next, what the next slide entails, right? Okay. So always remember to stay concise. This is not a detailed thing that can be sent as a Word file, as a report. Use humor. Don't overdo it every time, right? You can open up with humor. Don't overdo special effects. Um, look up about the topic as much as you can if it is not your research area. If it is your research area, obviously you should ideally know, right, what you're talking. I have always hated to see more than one message on a slide. So do what is called clustering. Cluster one message on a slide at a time. Use large impactful images, right? Use data in an easy to understand manner. It's not your research paper, right? Being You don't have to necessarily show off how many different ways you can analyze data. To basically show what is the upshot. Okay. So do remember there are potentially colorblind people in your audience. So, do not ignore their, choice that they will not be able to read contrast of, let's say, certain colors, right? Okay. They will see, colorblind people will see the color slightly different, right? I mean, there will be issues of seeing, distinguishing red and green colors. So if you're using red, do not use green, right? Or using green, do not use red, at least on the same image, right? Okay, so those things must be taken care of. You should be as friendly in terms of making sure everyone is included, in the sense that colorblind people. Most importantly, it's about you, right? Present in a relaxed manner, confident outward projection, be warm to audience, look up to their chin, don't stare at just one person. I've often seen somebody just staring at the chairman or their bosses looking for approval, right? Make eye contact with all the audience, then the right position, because some audience may be shy, is not necessarily to keep staring in their eyes, is to sort of have your target should be to have like few second contact with people's chin, exactly where you're looking at, few seconds, then you move on. See somebody looks obviously not getting something. If it's a small group, if it's a 500 people in your audience and one person seems confused, you can't slow down for them. You'll be holding up the time of everyone. But if it's a small group, you can have the time um, to see how everyone is following. And if you need to slow down, stop, right? Um, and make sure there are no typos and such things, right? And practice as much as you can. And if you fumble, it's okay. It's like, just kind of get up from where you fumbled, okay, and take it from there. Okay, use obviously, color combinations are specific to bit of culture, but not too many colors. In fact, if you use flashy colors, only using them once is useful. You can use tools such as timer, right? Uh, Pause more often. Record yourself giving the presentation. Those are those options in your PowerPoint. Vary your sentence length. Right? Some should be small in length, short sentences. modulate, right, your tone. Use the present mode when rehearsing, right? Practice it with different audience, not the same audience all the time, so you can get different kinds of questions, different concerns, right? Okay. Have confidence, because usually it's true in the grown-up world, which a lot of people don't realize till their 30s. People are usually too busy to even know their stuff. It's very unlikely they'll know your stuff, right? Okay. So um, there are even jokes of how you should imagine your audience, right? Uh, so there is one adage which I find useful in any presentation is assume your audience to be infinitely ignorant but infinitely smart, which means that you're not, if you make a logical case, they'll understand, but make as less assumptions about their previous knowledge as possible. And that is especially relevant when you're talking to audience which is essentially a general audience. And if you don't know your audience, assume they're general audience. But if you know they're super specialized, you can directly deep dive into technicalities and you don't have to make those assumptions. So it's about knowing your audience. So these are it, but I'll reiterate a few things. The commonest sense. So if I have to just say like, okay, 4 or 5 points, don't use very colorful background. Don't use too many animations. Don't use previous templates. Do not use more than six. Absolute worst, and I'm taking upper limit, 8 bullet points. Do not use more than 5 or 6 words on a bullet point. Uh, doesn't have to be complete sentences, definitely not paragraphs. Use ideally one large image per slide when you're using image. Use any transition very sparingly. Bullet points can emerge one after another, because if you want people to just read one bullet point, so that those are acceptable animations, and unacceptable ones are the ones of something making a swishing sound when you're transitioning from one slide to another, unless there's absolutely a reason to show that this has opened a door for you and you want to show that, otherwise keeping things simple. So keeping the rule, keep it simple, stupid, always helps. Contrast between your text and background should be strong. So background is black, font being white helps. Or if your background is very dark blue, font being yellow helps. Or your background is white, font being black helps. Uh, don't use dull brown font. That's one of the most annoying font colors. Use large font, don't use cursive. Not everyone's going to get cursive writing fonts. Definitely don't play around with some of the informal fonts on a regular thing. There are occasions they might be calling for PowerPoint and some fun animation stuff, but if you're basically giving a technical PowerPoint or a scientific presentation, don't go for cursive. And this is the last advice I'm giving you, is more of a matter of personal taste. Everyone has a different style. I would rather, if at all I have to thank an audience, I may thank them in the beginning. I'll say, I appreciate your interest, and I hope you take notes and we can have a long discussion at the end. And I'll be available, things like that. But I will not say that thanks for listening to the talk, right? I mean, maybe, but that's just my style. And I don't really like too bold of affiliations and all. And one of the things that I don't particularly like when I was, especially after moving back to India from US, people are very short in giving the right credit. I mean, often there is a wrong credit to people who have not done anything. Like there'll be institute director, there'll be HOD, there'll be a bunch of people who know nothing about the field. And majority of presentations you see in India are giving wrong credit. I've been at the wrong credit end since I've been a CEO running important things. But you have to give credit to people who actually did things, and no credit to people who didn't do anything. Somebody is providing money, you can say funding, total support X. Somebody is actually working on the project, they should get far more credit, and give them the credit. So people are people who give the right credit are appreciated, right? That honesty should reflect in your PowerPoints, that honesty should reflect in general, but that's generally about professionalism in general. And lastly, somebody gives you 15 minutes to talk, plan it for 14, don't make it 20. Always give rooms for questions and answers. That's sort of my take to how to make good PowerPoint presentations. And I'll end by saying if some presentations are possible without PowerPoint, I do that. I do it all the time, just whiteboard and markers. Okay.
That was very helpful, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone interested in free training that Ioncure provides, you all can apply at volunteer@ioncurerx.com. Thank you.